Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. We have so much data here. I could write a damn research paper on this, but we are going to be looking at how age indicates which wide receivers we should be drafting as rookies and which guys are more likely to be bust at the NFL level. Now, typically I've gone by the guide of, okay, you want to be placing a premium on 21-year-old rookies, 22-year-old rookies, and avoiding those guys that are 23, 24 years old, because typically you're going to see that those 23-year-old breakouts, I mean, the guy who's dominating at South Carolina, we'll talk about in just one second, at 23 years old, his fifth year in college, going up against 18-year-old future accountants, of course, he's going to look very good. But when you get to the NFL level and all of a sudden you're having to go up against other guys that are your age, if not a little bit older, other guys that are clear professionals, you just simply can't cut it, right? I mean, we've seen time and time again this profile disappoint at the NFL level, but it is way more complicated than I initially thought. So we're going to be breaking this down in so many different ways. One, we are going to be looking at the round that these players were drafted in. Two, we are going to be looking at the age that they played their rookie season. Now, this is not the age that they were drafted at. However, the age that they played their rookie year. So if a player is drafted at 21 years old next month, but then in September or October, he's turning 22, he is going to be counted as a 22-year-old rookie. So we are looking at the round that they are being drafted in. We are looking at the age they played their rookie season. We are looking at their points per game, both their rookie and their second years. And we're going to be coming up with historical hit rates. And I mean, it's honestly very, very surprising. So the players we will be looking at will be the cream of the crop. These are guys that went in round one of the NFL draft that were 21 years old their rookie seasons. We're using the RotoViz screener, and the best guys in this bucket, at least as rookies, were Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, Brandon Cooks, Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, Jordan Addison, Percy Harvin, Sammy Watkins, Jeremy Maclin, Larry Fitzgerald, Hakeem Nicks, Drake London, DJ Moore. We're going back to the year 2000 with this data with the RotoViz screener. And if you were looking at those rookie wide receivers that average more than 14 PPR points per game, you had 3 of them being Chase, Jefferson, Evans, and guys to average 10 points per game or more, you had 14 of them. Now, there were 26 total 21-year-old rookie wide receivers drafted in round one of their NFL drafts. So if you're looking at the probability, about half the time, or 53%, those guys will come out and they will do something as a rookie. And I understand that maybe you're saying 10 points per game isn't a big time threshold. And 100%, I understand it's not. I mean, we'll be diving in a little bit deeper in just one second. But 10 points per game is a good mark to see, okay, did he get on the field? Did he at least have a role? Did he make the tiniest bit of difference, right? Because a lot of times if you're a rookie and you do that, you will naturally increase in dynasty value going into the next season. Now, going over to the guys that went in rounds 2 and 3, what's very interesting is here you're actually seeing a similar hit rate in terms of the guys that had the elite ceiling, so 14 points per game or more as a rookie. Here you had Keenan Allen hit that. You had Juju Smith-Schuster. I mean, actually, maybe we did the math wrong here a little bit. It's actually 2 out of 27, those being the 2 guys. But you also had significantly fewer players hitting the 10 points per game threshold. So naturally, you're going to see that if you go later in the NFL draft, it doesn't matter how young you are. I mean, you are going to be less likely to hit overall. And then going over to the guys that went in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7. Here you had no 21-year-old rookies coming out and averaging 14 points per game. You had a few names averaging over 10 points per game. I mean, by a few names, I mean one. Yeah, Josh Gordon doing it. And obviously, Josh Gordon is the outlier of all outliers. Pretty much we can mark this at 0%. So it's very interesting is 21-year-old rookies, if they go day 3 of the NFL draft, they never do anything year 1. Unless you're Josh Gordon, but 9 times out of 10, it's legitimately nothing. Now, going over and looking at the older players, this is about where we're going to get some more information, right? We're going to look at the 22-year-old round 1 guys. Here, you see the numbers actually dip down a bit, where the 21-year-old round 1 players were at 11% chance at 14 points per game and almost a 54% chance at 10 points per game. Whereas here, that number drops down to 10.5% for 14 points per game and 42% for 10 points per game. So among the wide receivers that go in round 1 of the NFL draft, those guys that are going to play their rookie seasons at 21 years old, historically speaking, they've had a better expected hit rate than the guys that were going to play at 22. Now, of course, that's not to say that these players that were playing at 22 were bad. No, they're phenomenal options on this list. You had Odell Beckham Jr., Julio Jones, Brandon Ayuk, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Andre Johnson. I mean, Des Bryant, Calvin Johnson was on this, okay? So you have a ton of exciting players. Now, going over to the guys that go in rounds 2 and 3 as 22-year-old rookies, you're going to see that the expected hit rate falls dramatically in comparison to what you have with the 21-year-old players. You had about 7.4% at 14 points per game for the 21-year-old guys. And then here, this is going to fall down to 1.37. And the only guy to do it was Eddie Royal. I mean, you have other players that were obviously very good jumping up in year 2. We'll talk about that in just one bit. Guys like A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf. But you'll see the continued trend. These guys that go at the top of the draft, if they're a little bit older, they're a little less likely to break out. I mean, the floor on those players with 10 points per game is very low. And then going over to what we have with the 22-year-old rookies drafted on day 3, there are 127 of these total players. Nobody had 14 points per game as a rookie. You had a couple guys hitting 10 points per game. I mean, some elite level guys, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs. But keep in mind, there are 127 players in this bucket, right? So, of course, there are going to be some diamonds in the rough. Now, going over to the very old players is where things get very interesting. And we'll show this with the chart as well. But the probability of, if you're 23 years old or older and go in round 1 of the NFL draft, for you to average 10 points per game more as a rookie, it falls from about 54% if you're a 21-year-old option to where if you're this older option, down to 34%. That is massive. You're almost, I mean, half as likely here. Now, of course, you still have some very good wide receivers. You have Jalen Waddle, you have AJ Green, you have Calvin Ridley. You have a few recent names like Devonta Smith, as well as Zay Flowers here as well. The guys that go in rounds 2 and 3, I mean, it's about the same as what you're actually going to see with the 22-year-old guys. And then the guys that go in rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, this is where things get very interesting. You will begin to see that age does not matter on day 3 of the NFL draft. These players that are going near the very end, I mean, we just saw Puka Nacua go out there and absolutely dominate. So if we're looking at year 1 production, obviously across the board, it doesn't matter how old you are. The guys that go in rounds 1 of the NFL draft, 2, 3, they're going to be more likely to hit than the guys going later on. But what is extremely interesting to point out is if you are looking at those guys in year 1, these two charts show that you are significantly more likely to produce if you are a young rookie going at the top of the NFL draft in comparison to an old rookie going at the top of the NFL draft. However, when we get to rounds 4, 5, 6, 7, there's no correlation whatsoever, and age doesn't matter at all. So I don't necessarily know why this would be. I don't have some perfect explanation of why age matters so much early on in the NFL draft, but later on at wide receiver, it just simply doesn't matter. But maybe if we go through and maybe if we look at what these guys did in year 2, it's going to make a little more sense. So if we're going into their second season and we are looking at round 1 rookies that were 21 years old as rookies, so obviously they're 22 in year 2, they smash almost, I don't want to say every single time, but their expected hit rate is so damn high. I mean, the players that average 14 points per game or more as second-year players, if they were drafted in round 1 in the NFL draft and they played their rookie seasons at 21 years old, you had 15 out of 26 of these guys. That's almost 58%. You have Chase, Jefferson, Hakeem Nicks, Larry Fitz, Sammy Watkins, Kenny Britt, Brandon Cooks, DJ Moore, CeeDee Lamb, Percy Arvin, Corey Robinson, DeAndre Hopkins, Amari Cooper, Jeremy Maclin, Mike Evans. Now, of course, if we get a little bit older, you're going to see the continued trends, and it's almost identical to what we have with that year 1 production, where going into year 2, you will see that the 21-year-old wide receivers to hit 14 points per game or more, they go in round 1 in the NFL draft, 57%. The 22-year-old options, 19%. The 23-year-old options, 17%. You see the same thing in rounds 2 and 3. You go from about 15% for the 21-year-old players, 12.5% for the 22-year-old players, and for the guys 23 years old or older, about 6.8%. Then when we get rounds 4 through 7, it just simply doesn't matter. So I don't want to be looking at rookie wide receivers here that are going to be going on day 3 of the NFL draft this season. And instead, I want to pull up this 2024 wide receiver class. I want to look at the guys that are going at the very top, look at how old they are, and if this data should tell us anything about who we should be targeting or not. Now, a couple different things. One, I already can hear an argument down there in the comment section saying, Mason, it's different now. Mason, do you not know that these players can stay longer in college? The COVID rules, blah, blah, blah. COVID is back in 2020, okay? It's 2024. I 100% can buy that argument last year, the year prior, 2021. Yes, those draft classes were affected by the extra year of eligibility. But if you're going to be a top level player at the NFL level, if you're going to be the next wide receiver 1, you're not staying an extra year 4 years after COVID because of your eligibility. No, that's not happening. Now, there's one other argument that I can buy a little bit more, and that's going to be NIL. And if y'all remember, there are rumors circulating around Marvin Harrison Jr. that he was going to stay at Ohio State, that all of a sudden he was going to be getting paid $15, $20 million. And maybe I would buy this if it wasn't for the fact that if you look at this draft class coming out, how many guys were people really excited about that decided to stay in school because of NIL or any other reasons? There's really one, and that was a wide receiver at Ohio State. Obviously, Ohio State has a ton of money, but typically every single year, you're going to see 1 or 2 guys. So it doesn't really feel that different than what you had in 5, 10 years prior. Really, the only place that it could be different is maybe those guys that were borderline NFL draft picks, those guys that were going to be going on day 3 anyway. And as we already showed with this data, those day 3 options, the age doesn't really matter. So the players that maybe would stay a little bit longer in college now, given the different rules that you have, I think we can already say that they're not really impacted by this anyway. And more so, we are looking at those round 1, round 2, round 3 players. And of course, another thing, if you want so much more information about all these guys, you find it all on flogfantasy.com. I mean, there are rookie wide receiver databases up. There are a ton of rookie draft guides from all your favorite people on YouTube. I mean, Dynasty Land, Dynasty Domain, Fantasy Stock Exchange. Obviously, I have all my Dynasty Fantasy Football rankings, all my rookie rankings. If Dynasty Trade Calculator, you have everything over there on flogfantasy.com. If you like those guys on YouTube, I promise you're going to love it. And yeah, if you use code FLOCK on flogfantasy.com, you get 30% off any sub. And code FLOCK will get yours truly breaking down your Dynasty team with the podcast. And we have a super exciting launch coming later today on the site. We will keep you posted. But anyway, pulling up the wide receivers currently projected to go round 1 of the NFL draft right now. You have Marvin Harrison, Malik Nabers, Rome, Brian Thomas, Adonai, and Xavier Worthy. Now, none of these guys are super old. You don't have a 23-year-old. You don't have a 24-year-old in the mix. So really, we don't have to be super concerned. Maybe if we just wanted to highlight some of the guys that you can be a little bit more excited about with this data. I mean, if you're looking at Malik Nabers and Xavier Worthy, obviously Nabers a much better prospect, much higher probability of breaking out than what you have with Worthy. But both these guys will be 21 years old throughout the course of their entire rookie seasons. So, I mean, if you look at what Nabers did this past year in the SEC, not only was he one of the most productive wide receivers in the class, and not only was he at the very top in his yards per route run, his targets per team pass attempt, his yards per team pass attempt, not only was he number 1 in PFF grade, but he's also the youngest wide receiver in the class. He's penciled in to be a round 1 pick. And if we go back to this historical data, which includes a ton of wide receivers that were worse prospects than Malik Nabers, just based off the fact, knowing that this is going to be someone that is drafted in round 1, plays his rookie season at 21 years old, that gives him an implied probability of hitting 14 points per game or more in year 2 of about 58%. And then you add on the fact, like we said, that he's a better prospect than a lot of these other guys were as well. So, I mean, I think Nabers should be valued as an elite level wide receiver in Dynasty today. I think today he should be, a top 10 guy in Dynasty. If you go over to the community rankings on flogfantasy.com, which are free, you can pull them up whenever you want. But there you'll see that like Drake London's wide receiver 8. I would rather have Malik Neighbors over Drake London. I'm going to go ahead. I will pull that trigger now. Now going over to what we have with the day 2, guys. Going back to where you're looking at previously. You will be more likely to see that hit coming from a player that is younger. 14 points per game or more as a year 2 option for the 21-year-old rookies is going to be at about 14.8%. For the 22-year-old rookies at about 12.33%. And for the 23-year-old guys or older, about 6.79%. So really, the 21-year-old guys, the 22-year-old guys, they're about the same. But you do have that dramatic step down with the historical expected hit rate for those players that are going to be 23 years old or older their rookie season. So if we wanted to highlight those guys right now, I mean, some options, Ladd McConkey is right there. And I mean, if he has a really good excuse for staying in college so long and why he's just now coming out, I'd love to hear it, love to understand it. I mean, personally, I am not necessarily one that's buying the hype here. I think that this is a situation in which he's probably just stayed very long at Georgia. He probably was just able to develop a lot further than 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. Xavier Legette, another one of these guys that was in the SEC. I mean, Legette I'm also very worried about because he doesn't break out early on. It takes him forever to pretty much do anything at South Carolina. Roman Wilson is there. I mean, Ricky is there. Tez Walker, Jalen McMillan. Jalen McMillan, I will be willing to buy into his excuses a little bit more, given the fact that you had to play alongside Jalen Polk, that you had to play alongside Rome Odunze. So when you have that serious target competition, I think that's where you can see the outliers that are still able to hit stand out. I mean, the other examples that you have with guys like this, go look at Terry McLaurin at Ohio State, where he's stuck in one of the best wide receiver rooms in college football. Go look at some of these Alabama wide receivers, like, say, Jalen Waddle, right? Jalen Waddle is one of those guys that hits at 23 years old when he had to play alongside, I mean, top-level talent like Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, Devonta Smith, and throw Smith on this list as well, right? Smith broke out very old. So, I mean, obviously you have to put context to these guys. You're starting with that historical base rate, and then you have to understand the prospect profiles a lot more in the situation that they are playing in. And you can't just paint everybody with the same brush, but it is a solid indicator, and it is important to at least discuss. So I would say the Washington receivers, I'm going to be willing to give a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. Now, if we're going to go over to the Alabama guy, this is always something that I'm hesitant to do. I am not a super strong Devy player, so this will be something that I have to talk to a bunch of people on the site with. I know that Zach loves to talk some Devy. I know Corey loves Devy. I'll have to get a better sense of what the wide receiver competition was like at Alabama over the past few years, and if Alabama has a really strong wide receiver class coming out in 2025. Now, I personally am not a super big Devy guy. However, after the NFL draft, we will get Devy rankings over on flogfantasy.com for everybody. We're going to change the prospects where right now you can pull up the prospect rankings. You pull up any rookies that you want there. We'll put the rookies in the overall rankings. We'll insert the Devy players into those prospect rankings. I'm probably not going to be ranking them myself, at least not initially, definitely not in May, just simply because I don't know enough. But there are other guys on the site that absolutely love it, that do know more than enough to be able to help you out, and I'm sure that they would be happy to post their rankings there. So we will get the Devy rankings on the site next month, even if they're not coming out from yours truly. We have other people that obviously we trust a ton in that. But I think that's all I have for you. I really appreciate you. Really hope that you enjoyed this, got something from it. And yeah, if you wanted to join the flock, flockfantasy.com, code flock, get you 30% off any sub. Plus, yours truly will break down your Dynasty team in a podcast, and be on the lookout for the massive announcement that we have later today with the site as well. But thank you again. Really appreciate you. Hope you have a great day, and hope we get to see you out with the video tomorrow.